I'm Robin Schwartz. I'm the program director of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County, and Spring Rights is one of our many programs and services and grants. I'm going to put our website, artspartner.org, up on the chat. So if you want to click on it and see what we do, that would be great. Our sponsors need to be thanked, and we're very happy that we had sponsors this year. This was, a difficult year because we did lose other funding. I want to thank the Marriott, the Odyssey Bookstore, M&T Bank, Ithaca College. Oh hell. And the fifth one, I thought I could wing it. This is my 30th Spring Rights event, and I thought I could memorize my speech without trying to find it. We also get support from New York State Council on the Arts and Poets and Writers. If you would like to donate to the Community Arts Partnership, that would be kind of awesome. All of our events are free, but of course we need money. So I always make these pleas, please give us money. Any amount would be fine. And I'm going to put information and a link about that up in the chat. I want to tell you that all of you are on mute, and you will stay on mute throughout the call except for Jay, but please use the chat function heavily. Let's talk to each other and write comments, and you can communicate to just one person or you can communicate to everybody. So let's see some action on chat. I want you to know that there are 8 free writing workshops that are part of Spring Rights Literary Festival that are happening from December through March, and they all look great. I'm going to take them all. And I'm back. I want to see who I forgot. Ithaca College, Wegmans, M&T Bank, the Odyssey Bookstore, and the Ithaca Marriott. I also want to just put in a quick plug for our Capapalooza art sale starting on Friday. All this information is also on our website, which is going to be in the chat. We have a sale of donated art, and it's all vintage stuff, cool, quirky stuff from the 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. It's generally stuff from people's attics and basements and things they inherited and gifts they didn't want. And it ends up being this really cool, eclectic mix of very, very, very low priced art, because I'm going to sell 500 pieces of art in 3 days. So check our website for that information. Also on Saturday, 7 artists open their studios to you as part of the Greater Ithaca Art Trail. So this is the last event of the November Spring Rights Literary Festival happening right now. We didn't have many events that were happening at the same time, but right now there's also a reading happening for Ithaca College seniors, writing major seniors, and everything will be taped if you wanted to see that. So you can come back in a few days and you'll find every event, all 23 November events have been taped, and you can watch them at your leisure. So without further ado, I turn this over to the correct Jay Leeming.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you all for coming to this event. Sorry for the hassles of the wild alchemy of technology. I'm honored to be here. And we're going to tell a story, which is the Odyssey. And we're going to start it this evening and give you a taste of it. What else to say? Thanks to Cap and to Robin for doing the amazing work of making these things happen under difficult conditions. Always, art thrives on difficult conditions. Yes, we eat that stuff for breakfast and we make beautiful things. So let us begin. Let us begin, shall we? Yes, it's a dark night, and it is time to begin a story. If the sound is weird, let me know. If it's not weird, hopefully we're all good. We begin with water. We begin with water that comes from our eyes, the salt water. We begin with the water we drink. We begin with the sea, which is the mother of all life. We begin with that washing, changing, wild, collapsing, laughing element, which is water. We begin with the sea. begin by speaking to the story. May the story come like a river of breath, like an anvil made of old images, like a dream dreamed by a community which is us, which is ourselves with our beating hearts. May it come to us like a coyote made of breath, to this wandering moment in which we live, here in Ithaca, here in upstate New York, here on Turtle Island. May this story come like a seed and be nourished by our glances which are like rainwater, and may that seed flourish and nourish the future in which we all will live. Once there was a boy who had no father. Well, he had a father, yes, but his father was never there. His father was away, his father was gone. This boy's name was Telemachus, and his mother's name was Penelope. Every night she would put him to sleep, put him to bed, and he would say, "Where is Daddy?" And she would say, "Daddy's fighting in the war." "When will he be home?" "Soon," she would say. And then she would sing him to sleep, as outside in an oak tree an owl hooted a few times. So soon was a long corridor, and soon seemed never to end, for his father did not come home. He was small, he was a little boy at the start of this, but as time went on, as the crashing river of time moved towards eternity, which is the sea, day followed day, and his father did not come home. But still he had a good childhood. Penelope was a kind and a generous mother, and he had his grandparents, who were Laertes and, what was his other name? Laertes, yes, and Anticlea, thank you. Laertes and Anticlea, his grandparents, they raised him there on that island of Ithaca. Perhaps you know in your hearts what the island of Ithaca is like, that rocky place where grapes grow and olives as well, a few other things. So he grew older as time moved forward. And then years later there came a day when a great shout rang out and went like a ripple across the island of Ithaca. It came from the harbor, and the shout was, "They're coming home. They're coming home!" And people raced to the harbor. And when they got there, far out on the glinting water, they could see the Greek ships were coming home, home from the Trojan War. And there was much joy in Ithaca that day, as husbands and brothers and sons were reunited with their families. But there was sorrow also, for many came back with scars, with missing limbs. Many did not come back at all. And people would ask, and they would be told the story of how this one died in this particular way, this one died on this day, that one died on this day. And Telemachus and Penelope were left with an emptiness, for his father, her husband, did not return on that day. Well, they went forward, as we humans do. They went forward through the whirlwind of the days, which each day is. And still he would ask at night, he would say, "Where is Daddy?" And she would say, "He's on his way home." "When will he be here?" "Soon," she would say. Well, time went on, and he grew older. He grew into a young man. And one day, a beautiful summer day, there was Penelope outside the house. Now their house was something like a palace. There were many beautiful things there, and there was a large apple tree outside that house. Penelope was there, looking far off at the sea. And then a man came walking by, a man named Antinous. He came walking by, and he saw Penelope there, and he saw a certain light in her eyes, of the far-off sea glinting in those eyes. And he said, "Good day, lady." And she said, "Good day, Antinous." And he looked up at the apple tree there, and he said, "This apple tree, Penelope, it needs a little work, doesn't it? Look at that limb there. It's rotting, isn't it?" She looked up. "Yes, it's true. It could use some pruning." You know, Penelope, I think many things here could use a little work, a little upkeep. It's a lot of work to care for this place. I think you need some help around here. I don't know about that, she said. Oh, yes, you do. Certainly you need some help. This apple tree, all your flocks of sheep, the goats you have, the chickens, the orchards you have back there. It's a lot for you to handle. I can see that in your eyes. My dear, you need a man here. You may be a queen of this place, but you need a king. And I hate to say it, but your king is not here. I don't think he's coming home. So you should face facts, if I can say. You should face facts and choose someone else. There's plenty of fine young men on this island. And she looked at him and said, Antinous, no. My husband Odysseus, is coming home. He will be home soon. Very well, my lady, he said. And she watched him go. He said goodbye. He turned, but as he turned, he noticed the apples, and he reached out and he plucked an apple from that apple tree. And he bit into that apple, and it was sweet. And he walked away. So time went on, but Antinous came back to eat those apples, and now sometimes he brought his friends. Sometimes they would sit there underneath that tree, and they would eat the apples, chewing them and throwing the cores away. And then after a while, they got more bold. There were chickens running around. Who would miss a chicken? You know, there's lots of chickens, sure. So they killed a chicken and roasted it there. Eventually, they roasted a goat. Eventually, they set up camp in that place, it must be said. Eventually, they were virtually living in the house of Penelope and her son Telemachus. So that house was often loud. There was singing and wild songs and gambling late into the night, and Telemachus found it hard to sleep. Well, on one such day, a summer day, the courtyard was filled with these men, the suitors they're called. They were there. They had bones. They had dice they've made out of the bones of a goat, and they were casting those dice on an ox hide, and they were singing songs and gambling. And Telemachus was there, but he was not looking at them. He was at the doorway looking far out across the island. And as he watched, a stranger came towards their house. A tall man. For a moment he thought to himself, as he always did, Could it be? Could it be my father? He looked like a man who'd traveled over many oceans, but it was not his father. And the man came to the door, and Telemachus said, Ah, stranger, come in, be welcome in this place. Yes, all travelers are sacred to Zeus, the all-father of us all. Come in and be welcome here. And Telemachus got a table, and there was bread and cheese on it, and a little wine, and a little roast meat. And he provided these things for the stranger who had come into the house. And the two of them ate together for a while in companionable silence. And then Telemachus spoke. He could hold it in no longer, and he said, I apologize for the noise in this house. These men here gambling and singing songs, my mother doesn't want them here. I don't want them here either. If my father were here, he would scatter them all away like a wolf scatters sheep to the far edges of a field. But he is not here, so I apologize, stranger. But I must say, my heart is curious. I long to know who you are. You seem a man who's come a long way over many miles. I'm asking who you are and why you have come here. My heart longs to know. And the stranger spoke and said in a golden voice, My name is Mentes, and I have come here seeking your father. But it seems I've come too early. Yes, I'm here before he got here. For I knew your father, long ago. In Crete we both sailed around there, a long time before the war, a long time before you were born, I believe. So I've come seeking him, but as I said, I'm a little early, I suppose. But I have some advice for you, young Telemachus. Some advice, and that's this. Go in search of news of your father. There are people out there who know him well and were with him in the Trojan War. I'd say Menelaus in the kingdom of Lacedaemon. Go to him. He fought with your father in that war, that brutal, grinding struggle. He fought with him there. Seek him out. You just get a boat and sail. You could sail tomorrow to that place and see if he has any news of your father. Well, stranger, said Telemachus, that's a wonderful idea, but I know something about boats, but I'm no sea captain. No, I couldn't do that all on my own. Have no fear, said Mentes. Just come to the harbor tomorrow morning, right before dawn. I will meet you there, and I will have a boat, and I will have a crew. All right, said Telemachus. And with that, he and the stranger named Mentes went to the door, and Telemachus was about to thank this tall stranger named Mentes, but he blinked for a moment, and suddenly all he saw was an osprey flying away across the trees. And he wondered if perhaps that guest had not been a human at all. And then fire filled his heart, and he turned and he looked at the suitors there, gambling, drinking the wine from the cellar, and he said to them, "Antinous, all you rabble, what are you doing here? If you were true, honest men, you would not stay in this place. You would go, you would find a life for yourselves somewhere else. You are eating away another man's home. If my father was here, he would scatter you all away like a wolf scatters sheep from a field." Now Antinous stood up, and he walked towards Telemachus, and he said, "Telemachus, my boy, strong words from a young one like you, a young chicken like yourself. Well, listen, boy, your father's not coming home. Odysseus is dead. He's dead. His bones are floating around in the ocean. At this point, he's become food for the crabs and the birds. He is not returning. Your mother needs to face the facts. She needs to choose another man from among us here. Yes, indeed. And she might just do this, for I think I can see it in her eyes. Perhaps she will take a liking to one of us, perhaps even me. And then I will be your father, boy, and this house will be my house, and that will be my apple tree, and this chicken I've eaten will be my chicken, and I will be your father, and I will give you some strong words and tell you how to speak to guests." Well, Telemachus just went away. He went away to his own bedroom up the stairs, and he closed the door, and he tried to sleep. And darkness covered the world, and the stars came out and shone down in their ancient patterns in the sky. And the roads of the world were dark. But in the morning, before the sun actually came up, Telemachus got up. There was that blue light in the sky, like we all know, for we walk this earth. We see the sun rise and the sun go down. We know the rhythms of these celestial objects. They are in our bones and in our blood, so we hear them in the story like an echo of we know ourselves already. And we remember that blue light before the sun rises. Telemachus got up then in the blue hour and crept down the stairs and between the bodies of the sleeping suitors, stepping carefully between them, snoring off their drunkenness in the hall there. But as he came to the door, someone saw him, and it was Eurycleia, an old nurse who'd been with the family for a long time. And she looked at Telemachus and said, "Telemachus, up so early? Where are you going, young one?" And he said, "Eurycleia, don't tell anyone. I am going to seek news of my father. I am going to Lacedaemon to speak to King Menelaus, for he was there with my father in Troy, and I have heard that perhaps he knows something about where my father is. So please, keep this a secret as long as you can. Don't tell my mother, for she would be worried." And Eurycleia said, "I will do my best to keep it a secret." And Telemachus went down to the harbor, and the sun was just rising, just cresting the sea there, coming over the edge and filling the world with its light. The Father, Sun, spreading all the children of its light through all the leaves and the glimmering waves, and shining in every grape on every branch of that island. And there was a boat there, and there was Mentes, and there was a crew. And Mentes said, "Telemachus, good morning. I have a boat and I have a crew. Let us set sail. Let us find news of your father." "Very well," said Telemachus, "let us go." He could hardly believe his eyes. There was a boat there and a crew. So they hoisted the sails, and they began to row out into the sea. It was a beautiful day, and the clouds were high in the sky, and the seagulls cried around them, and the salt smell was in their noses as they traveled across the sea. And the waves crashed and collapsed beneath their boat. And they sailed for a good long while, and they made good time. Sometime that afternoon, they looked far off and they saw land, the kingdom of Lacedaemon, where Menelaus lives, King Menelaus. And they brought their boat to that shore, and they began to walk up the beach. And then they went up a trail towards the heights of that place, and there was a palace there. And there were many people all around who welcomed them. and they were taken to that palace. Now this palace was something else. Even to describe it in a story is to test the limits of imagination, for indeed there were two statues there at the door of gods as well. One was a satyr, the other one was Poseidon as well on the other side, and he had a silver pitcher, and water was trickling out of that pitcher down into a basin. And they went inside, and the palace was made of wood and of stone. It was a well-timbered house. On the ceiling there were the patterns of the constellations. There were tapestries over there. There was a mosaic underfoot with a man dressed in green jumping over a great bull. Marvelous things were in this place. Gold and silver. The place shone like a necklace made for the gods. And it was a feast time. It was a feasting time to Poseidon, the god of the sea. Yes, the power that runs through the waves and the water in our faucets and in our bodies as well, and in the clouds. And they went, Telemachus and Mentes went into this feasting hall. And they sat down, and they were welcomed, and there was a plate put before them, and food and wine was poured. And there was a high table there in that hall. And at this table 2 people entered, 2 grand and luminous beings, and one was King Menelaus, and the other was Helen. Helen of Troy, but now of the place of Lacedaemon. There she was, and they shone like stars themselves. And Telemachus was aghast, amazed, as his hide was sparking with joy at seeing this place. And he spoke to Mentes and said, Mentes, this must be like the kingdom of Zeus. The hall of Zeus must be exactly like this, for surely I've never seen anything like this in the world. And King Menelaus heard his words and said, Oh no, stranger, oh no. The kingdom of Zeus, the hall of Zeus is far beyond anything us humans can conceive of, far beyond anything we can make or create with our minds or with our hands. But I've done all right. Still, all this you see here, the gold, many of it came from Troy, that cursed place. And I would give away every bit of it, every golden cup, every tapestry on the wall. I would throw it all into the sea. I would burn it all in a great hole, if only I could have the sight of my dear friend Odysseus back, a dear friend of my heart, for I have not seen him in so long. And still, that whole war was a tremendous waste of lives and of grief. I agree, it was a terrible thing. I would give all this away just to see dear Odysseus one more time. But tell me, young one, why are you here? Why have you traveled across the sea's broad back? Why have you come to this place? What are you seeking here? And Telemachus said, King Menelaus, I am here seeking the man of whom you speak, for I am his son. Odysseus is my father. Long I have lived without him here around me and in my house, and so I long to know what has happened to him. And I am old enough, I tell you, to know the truth. Yes, indeed, if you are hiding anything, if there are secrets within that you did not speak, please let them out. If you know for certain that my father is dead, that his bones are rolling about the bottom of the sea, that he died in a horrible way in battle, cut down by a spear of the Trojans, if he died at sea, please let me know. For I must have an end to this. I must know where my father is. Please tell me what you know about where he is and how I can find him. And Menelaus said, Well, my boy, I do know something of where your father might be, but it's just scraps, really. But I will tell you what I know. And he called for a cup of wine, and he began to speak. And he said, Telemachus, when that war was over, we were sick at heart. We'd lost so many of our friends there in that smoking ruin of a place, Troy. What had it all been for? Why were we even there? We barely knew anymore. But we knew we wanted to leave. So me and my sailors, my soldiers, we got into our boat, and we set sail right away. Across the wine-dark sea, away from Troy, hungry to leave that place behind us, and to be home again in the dear place where our families are. So we sailed out away from Troy. The wind blew and we made good time. Yes, we covered many miles that first day. All was going well. We could almost see the cooking fires of our own villages. They seemed just ahead. It seemed like any moment we would be back home in the bosom of our families. But then, a great wind came up. A shrieking wind, a black wind, came flying across the sea. Shrieking, it blew against our boat. The boat slid this way. The sails went that way. Jugs went rolling across the deck. We held on. We were whirled around this way and that way. And we went across the sea this way and that way, not sure where we were going, hanging on for dear life. We were blown. It was a wind sent by the gods, clearly. And we were blown far off course. Whirling, we came to the dusty, scrawny island of Pharos, off the coast of Egypt. And still the wind blew like the anger of a great god itself. And we were on that shore, and we beached our boat there and prepared to wait it out. Well, we hunkered down beside our boat, but that wind blew, ferocious, like the howling of wolves, like 10 blizzards rolled into one, steaming and streaking across the sea. I could see the white caps, the salt, and the water was blown into our faces. Still, that wind did not relent. All that first day, we were stuck there. Now, we had food in our boat, and so we ate some of that food. And we slept the night, hoping that in the morning the wind would be gone. But that wind was not gone. It kept blowing. Every day, more and more wind. There was an endless supply of wind. We were stuck in this place. So we began to get hungry. We began to run out of food. So we went to the sea and we fished there. We threw lines into the sea to catch fish, but there were not many fish in this place. No. So my sailors and I, we had cramped bellies, narrow bellies from not eating so much at all. We had a few little hardtack bread in our boats. It was bad. A few fishes here and there. We were starving. We were dying by inches in that place. So dark thoughts filled my head. After 10 years of war, to die here of starvation on an island just because of a scrap of wind thrown down, perhaps by the gods? What kind of an end is that for men such as us? So I went for a walk. I went for a walk along the shore, the borderline between the sea and the land, and perhaps the border of other things as well. I walked along that shore, thinking dark thoughts within myself. And then I looked and I saw her. Was it a bird? What was it? A strange shape, a glimmering wind came out of the sea. There was lots of spray. What is that? And then there was a young woman, and she was walking towards me. She had golden hair, and she looked at me and she said, Nepios eis o Zene, Nepios eis o Zene. Stranger, are you a little baby? Are you a little child that you stay in this place? Can't you see you must leave? You must get off this island or you will starve, surely. And I said, Dear lady, goddess, if that is what you are, power of earth or sky, come here to speak with me. Thank you for your generous question, but I want nothing more than to leave this place. I would long to get out of here. I long to get home. All of us want to get home. But I do not know how to do it. This wind comes shrieking across the sea. It keeps us here. We are pinned down by this wind. If I have offended some god or goddess, I long to know. Perhaps you know. What is the way off of this island for me? And she said, I don't know. I have no idea, I'm afraid, stranger. But there is one who does know the answer. There is one who does know and who can get you off this island. And his name is Proteus, the old man of the sea. And he has traveled through many of the oceans and across the land. He knows many secrets of this world. Yes, if you can speak to him, he will solve your problem. He will tell you how to get home. Wonderful, I said. I would love to. How do I find him? Where is this fellow? Well, that's the trick, she said. That is the trick. For he can change his shape. Proteus can become anything he wants. He can become a stone, a bird, a flower. He could be the shell right here on the beach between us. He could be that cloud in the sky right now listening to our talking. He could be anywhere. Some say he's an animal. Some say he's a god. Some even say he is my father. But he is mysterious and always changing. However, he does have certain habits. And one of these habits is that he goes to the far side of this island. When the sun is high in the sky, at noon he goes there. And he has a flock of seals there, and he sings to that flock of seals, sings to them in that shady place there, sings to them until they fall asleep. He does this every day. So if you can go there, if you can wear some sealskins, that is my advice for you. Yes, put some sealskins around yourselves, wrap yourselves up tight and hide out there, and then jump out and catch him. And he will try to shake you off. He will turn into all different forms. He will become a rat and a camel and a firework and a tree and a sequoia and a stone. He will do whatever he can to get out of your grasp. But if you hang on to him, eventually he will get tired of changing and he will answer your question. Do that, stranger. Wonderful. I will do that. And she gave me further advice and said I should pick 3 of my best men and meet her at the far side of the island the next morning. So I thanked her, and she turned and went away, and I blinked, and all I saw was a seabird flying away across the waves. And darkness came, and the stars shone down like nails of ice down into the cavern that is this world. And the questions filled our minds, and I went back, and I spoke to my sailors, and I picked 3 of them, and I told them our plan. And then we slept as the wind blew, rattling the fronds of the palm trees above us. And in that sleep I dreamed, and I dreamed I was a seal, swimming underneath the ocean, like someone flying, like a bird flying. I dreamed all night long I was a glorious, slippery seal, like a word in a language only the sea knows. And then the sun rose, and I took 3 of my men, and we crossed that island and went to the far side, the shady side. And there she was, that glimmering goddess of a woman, whoever she was. There she was, like a glimmering golden wind. And she welcomed us and said, "Good morning, Menelaus. Here, I have seal skins for you." And we looked at these seal skins. They were seal skins. They looked pretty rough. And she said, "Get in these seal skins. You must wait here until noon or so, and then my father will come." So we prepared to get into these seal skins. Now, my sailors, I should say, the 3 of them and me, well, we'd seen a lot of stuff. We'd seen blood and guts. We'd seen trouble and wreckage and ruin and horrible things in that war. But we had never had to climb into a dead seal skin before. So my sailors got down and picked up those seal skins, but it smells. Oh, it was a noxious, radioactive, toxic smell from the bottom, the depths of the sea. It was horrible, I have to say. So they looked at me like, I don't know if we can do this, boss. And I looked at her and she said, dear friends, mortals, silly, fragile mortals, I have thought of this, yes." And she pulled out 4 handkerchiefs. And she said, "These handkerchiefs have been rubbed with ambrosia, the sweet food of the gods. And now they will smell, well, divine. So hold these next to your noses and you'll be able to stand these seal skins, you rough, tough men." So we took these handkerchiefs, and indeed, the smell was like a spring wind in a rose garden. Beautiful smell, beautiful smell. So we put these next to our noses, and we wrapped the seal skins around us, and we got down on the ground, and we were there in the dark. And she said, "Goodbye, good luck." And we heard her steps walking away. And then the strangeness began. I don't know if you've ever been wrapped in a sealskin before. There we were in the dark, with the smell of that celestial rose garden in our noses. And far off I could hear the waves breaking, and the seagulls crying, and the palm fronds rattling in the wind. And it seemed again I was dreaming. Was it a dream or was it real? Was I a seal? I began to drift off. It seemed I could fall asleep there inside a sealskin and sleep forever. But then we heard a sound. Far off, a wailing sound, like a whistling sound. It was a song someone was singing, but the song was always changing. Twisting and turning, the song was spiraling and moving like strange smoke. closer and closer it came, until finally we heard footsteps on the beach. And then suddenly we all jumped out and we looked, and there was an old man, and he had green eyes and long hair, and he looked at us and he said, "Lad!" We looked at him and said, "Lad!" We grabbed hold of him as tight as we could, and he turned into a camel, and then he turned into a roaring lion. His claws were all over us, and then he turned into a fire, a bonfire. Have you ever held a bonfire in your hands? We embraced the bonfire. The sparks and the smoke went up, obscuring the sky. Then he became a great river, a river sloshing around us. Bubbles and waves were all around us. Then a great tree, a sequoia tree, it seemed. We could barely embrace this tree. It was so gigantic. The branches high above, the wind whistling through them. And then he became a small fly. We grabbed him. We swatted him. He became a mouse, a rat, a camel, a starfish, a horse, a camel again, a cat, a dog, all kinds of things, a cockroach, a snake slithering away. And then we held him and he became a man with long hair and green eyes. And he looked at us and he said, "Stranger, why have you caught me here? What do you want?" And I said, "Old man, tell me how to get off this island." And he said, "Oh, stranger, it's not so difficult. You're in such a hurry. You two-leggeds, you humans always in a hurry. It's not so difficult. You left Troy without giving thanks, without thanking the deathless gods for the life you have, and the sun in the sky, and the clouds, and the beauty of walking on solid ground, and of seeing the ocean glinting far off. You did not give thanks, stranger. You must sail back to Troy, all the way back to Troy, and there you must set up an altar in the sand. You must provide offerings and words of praise to the deathless gods. You must thank the gods, and then you'll get home. It'll be no problem." Well, my heart inside me was filled with grief, knowing we had to go back that long and weary way, back to Troy, the place where we'd lost so many of our friends. Still, there were other questions in my head, and I said, "Tell me one more thing. Tell me, what has happened to my friends, the others, the Greeks? Did they all get home? Are they home safe with their families, or were any of them lost on the far sea? Tell me what has happened to them." "Oh, stranger," he said. "Oh, stranger, why do you ask? How much sorrow can your heart take? How much grief can you swallow in this world? Well, many of your friends got home safe. Many of them are home now, sitting beside crackling fires, enjoying the laughter and the love that is there in their homes. But there are some who did not make it. I think of 3 in particular. The first, little Ajax. Ajax Jr., you all called him. He was unscathed by that war, as you remember, not a scar on him. He did well. After that war finished, he got in his boat with his sailors, and off they sailed. Across the wine-dark sea they went. They had a following wind. They made good time. But then a wind came out of nowhere, sent by the gods, perhaps. A shrieking, scouring wind that blew his boat far off to a difficult place, where there was a black cliff and sharp rocks beside it. And in a storm they had to steer their boat right between the cliff and those rocks. But they were good sailors all. They managed to get through that gap in the rocks and to the other side. And then the storm failed and whispered away across the sea. So he would have been all right. But little Ajax was filled with gladness at being alive, and this gladness became pride, and that pride became anger. And so he beached his boat on the shore, and he climbed up to a high cliff, and he yelled at the gods. He said, "You gods could not kill me. I am a man. I am a sailor. I have survived Troy, and I have survived this. Everything you have sent is nothing. I am alive. I curse you, gods." And just like that, Poseidon heard. For words are powerful. The whispered words are heard by the gods. Even the smallest word is heard. So he yelled at the gods, and Poseidon sent a great lightning bolt down. It shattered that cliff into 1,000 pieces that went rambling down into the sea. So little Ajax was drowned in earth and stone, and then drowned a second time in the waters of that sea. His bones are down there now. He is food for the crabs and the fishes now. And my heart broke within me to hear this. Little Ajax, so sweet, so innocent, who'd survived that whole war. But then he said, Proteus said, "Well, there is another, a second one. Your brother, Agamemnon, the great general of the Greeks, who led you all through 10 years of war. He had good sailing on the way home as well. No shrieking winds came for him. He did well. Yes, he sailed across the wine dark sea. He got home to his palace and to his family there. There was a feast. Who would not want a feast after 10 years of war, after finally arriving at home? And then this man requested a bath. Who would not want a bath after war and bloodshed, after traveling, after being away for 10 years? And in that bath chamber, his wife Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, her lover, they murdered him in that bathtub. They killed him, they butchered him like an animal, and the blood ran down the drains of that house and out to the sea. So Agamemnon, your great general, your brother, is no more. And sobbing filled my bones, and my salt tears went down into the sand to hear this horrible end of my dear brother Agamemnon. And then I looked at Proteus and I said, "But you said there was a third. Who is the third one you speak of?" "Of the third one I know very little," said Proteus. "I have heard just a few things. The man of many turnings, the man of many changes. Well, he's off on an island, you know. Odysseus is his name. He's on an island held prisoner by Calypso, the beautiful sea goddess. Every morning he remembers his dear wife Penelope, and his dear boy Telemachus, and his island of Ithaca, that sweet and rocky place. He remembers that dear home of his, and he goes to the seashore, and he gazes off across the waves in the direction of Ithaca, and he cries salt tears which flow down into the sea itself. And then he hears a voice, and the voice is calling his name, and it is the voice of Calypso, the sea nymph, and the music of her voice wraps him in a spell as in a warm blanket, and she says his name again, and all memory of his home and of his family passes from his mind, and he turns, and he is under the spell of her beauty and of her voice and of that place. That is what I know of him. That is what I know of him. Perhaps he is still there. Perhaps he's left. That's all I know. But I've had enough talking, stranger." And with that, Proteus turned into a river, and he flowed away into the sea, and was gone. So my sailors and I went back to our boat, and we slept the night there as the wind went through the fronds of the palm trees above us. And then we sailed back to Troy, a long and weary way. And once we were there, we set up an altar on the sand, and we sang out to the deathless gods, and we said, "Gods above, we thank you for this life, for the breath in our bodies, and the water around us, the water we drink, the water we travel across in the sea. We thank you for the beauty of the seagulls, and the light in women's eyes, and the strength of men and of women both, and of wisdom it lives in books and in songs. We thank you for the taste of grapes, and the sweetness of the apple. O deathless gods, we praise and honor you with our words and with our actions." And then we burned an ox there. We killed an ox and burned it, and the smoke went high up to the deathless gods. And we sang the old songs. We sang the old songs to the gods. And then we slept as the stars came out and darkness covered the world. And at night we dreamed, and all night it seemed the wind ran through the palm trees and rattled the fronds of those trees. And then in the morning I was awoken by a sound, and that sound was silence. There was no wind blowing. "Quick," I said, "quick! My men, my sailors, let us go!" So we jumped into our boat. We pushed off from that cursed shore of Troy, and we began to sail across the sea. We made good time across the waves, and a wind came eventually, but it was a kind wind that blew us back to Lacedaemon, that blew us back to this very hall where you sit right now, where we are here among these timbered beams and the stones and the beautiful things of this place. So that is my journey, Telemachus. That is what I know of your father. Well, Telemachus thanked him for his story and for these scraps of news about his father. And then they all feasted some more and sang songs to the deathless gods, and then they all slept in that palace. And darkness covered the world, and the stars came out. And the next morning Telemachus said goodbye to Menelaus, and thanked him for the stories and wisdom he had given him. And he and Mentes went down to their boat, and they sailed off away from that island and across the sea. But the thing is that far away on the island of Ithaca, The suitors, well, they'd made some preparations. For indeed, Eurycleia, the old nurse of that house, she had kept her word. She had not told anyone of Telemachus's departure. But someone had seen his ship leaving that harbor, and someone had told the suitors, so that now they were gathered in their boat in a rocky place outside the harbor of Ithaca, and they had spears, and they were prepared to ambush Telemachus. For they felt he was up to no good. But Telemachus knew nothing of this. He was on that boat, and he was thinking of his father, and he looked up at the sky, and he looked down at the crashing waters of the sea. So we leave this story here. This story which lives and sings in us and in the hills and in the countryside of upstate New York where we live. I invite you to put a little breath into your hands and send it off to this story, just like this, your own precious breath, to feed this story which has come a long way, like a seed on the side of a deer, perhaps. It has come all this way to live here amongst us on this evening in the evening of November. So that's it for the story. If we have a moment, I would love to hear if any of you have a moment in this story which speaks to you, which grabs you or jolts you in some way. I invite you to speak it into the room, not as a question or an idea, but as just to say a moment in this story. And I should say the rest of the Odyssey is on my website, which is jayleeming.com. We got to speak in, yes, we do. I'll type it in here. We've got to think and we've got to talk in internet stuff right now, don't we? There it is. It's just my name.
Jayleeming.com.
.com. There it is. So if you want to hear the rest of this story, it's usually in a special secret box on the website. But for the next week only, it's there. It's 5 episodes, about 5 hours of my telling of this story. A story's like a landscape, and this is my particular walk through it this particular time. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to Cap as well, and to Robin and everyone. If we do have a moment, if anyone wants to unmute yourself and say a moment in the story that speaks to you in some way. It's not an essay, it's not an idea or a question. It's just just saying, oh, this moment. A lot of moments in this story. Proteus. So I invite you to do that if we have time, Robin. If we don't.
I just allowed everybody to unmute themselves. So now you have control over unmuting yourself. So you want to just shout out something? That would be great.
Love it. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, it's a way of making the story live amongst us. If there's a moment in the story which grabs you, please say so.
This is like, usually it's interesting for this is the 23rd Spring Rights event. There aren't a lot of questions and there aren't a lot of comments. I think people are all snugly in their beds and are just enjoying listening. Ella said, beautiful and truly engaging. Thank you. I too especially enjoyed the interludes of music. So Jay, you were originally a musician before you were a storyteller, right?
Yes, I've been a musician over the years for sure. And poetry and music, this is a way to use them both for sure, which is cool.
Yeah.
I believe Esther has something to say there. I saw her hand waving.
Esther, I just sent you something. I clicked ask to unmute. You should see.
There we go.
There you are.
So the instance of aromatherapy for the men who had to wear the seal skins.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a great moment, huh? It's great. It's so human, and they've seen war for 10 years, but they can't handle the smell. Thank you, Esther. Yeah. So again, I invite you. This is a story which is almost 3,000 years old. So it's just great to have it live for a moment, like this. When he turned into a fly, it seemed, yes, yes, tense and tricky. Yes. Where they would wear the seal skins. Yeah. Proteus can change into anything, of course. And yeah, he turns into a fly. Homer says, I think, a fire, a lion, a snake, and a river as well. Another comment I'm looking at. Great. Thanks. Thank you. Yes.
I was going to say, Jay, I've known about Proteus since I read the Odyssey in college, and I know what the word protean means, but I never experienced him so much before. So that was a great passage.
Thank you. Thank you. I first heard this story actually just because there might be writers in the audience here. We're all writers in some way. We're all authors of our lives. As a metaphor for writing a poem, actually. What's his name? There was a poetry teacher who said that to me. You hang on to it through all its revisions until finally it gets to tell you something true. And maybe that's one way to look at it, a literary way. Anyway, thank you, Howard. Yeah. Proteus, love it. Love the
I love what
moment.
Ella said. She said, in the style of retelling feels Homeric. I feel like I finally understand a bit of what these stories were like back in the day and the way they would have been retold. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun to realize that this story in particular comes covered in gold, and it's like it lives on the library, but it's fun to realize that it actually is supposed to dwell in the voice.
Yeah.
So thank you all for being here and helping that happen. Any other comments? If not, that's totally cool. Guitar sounds like the waves. Yes, well, we try. We aspire. I aspire to bring it all in. Thank you, Esther. Yes. Cool. This story is like a landscape you can live in. Perhaps tomorrow you'll remember some scrap of it that will come back to you, that moment on the shore. Perhaps we are all wandering sailors. The West loves this story, the West being Europe and America, right? I mean, perhaps because we are wanderers and don't feel at home as much as, say, the Gaiokono, the Iroquois, might in this place. So this is a story about seeking that home. And a story about absent fathers. The suitors have no fathers. A lot of them are dead in the war, of course. Cool. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
What am I going to do not
Thank you
sitting in
all.
my bedroom listening to Spring Rights every night? I can watch the videos, which are going to be on the Spring Rights website soon. And please
Great.
check out those 8 free workshops that we're doing. They're all really different and they're all going to be really amazing. And of course, just like these events, they are free. So thank you. That's the close to the Spring Rights in November, meant to be May 2020. See you in May of 2021. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jay.
Yes. Thank you, Robin. Thanks so much. Thanks for everybody for coming. Bye.